everyone. Welcome to Pivotal Practices. This is our 13th episode of the podcast, and today I'm really excited to bring you some more yoga stuff. Instead of just lecture or guests, we're going to mix it up. So there are several subjects I want to go over today. This podcast is really for anybody. This could be men or women, but the very end meditation that I'm going to do is solely for women because it's actually going to be helping women with like their reproductive system, the pelvic bowl, and their anatomy. So you might just want to pause and ignore it, or you can listen to it if you're just interested. But either way, it's going to be geared towards women. So it's just me today, and I have with me a yoga mat. So you want a yoga mat, and I always say, and I've said it in the videos before, get a thick, non-slip yoga mat so that you're not sliding when you're doing it. If you're getting a cheap one for $20, $40, I'm going to tell you should at least be spending more like $60 to $100 so that you know it's non-slip, that the cost may be more, but it will last you a longer time, much longer than you think. Then you won't be slipping, and that's going to stop you from actually getting injured. And at the same time, you'll get prolonged muscle soreness when you slip too much on the mat, and that's not something that we want. You can get injured if your muscles are too sore. If you're constantly practicing in that way and muscles have prolonged soreness for a while, that again can also be a precursor to injure yourself. So what we're going to talk about is I'm having clients come to me with a lot more MRI results, and then I also have a population of people that are now moving from into their 40s or into their 50s or into their 60s. Some clients are even in their 70s, and I'm dealing with bone loss in the hips. I'm seeing osteoporosis, right? Usually when we're at like a certain age, there's multiple spinal things happening, maybe slip discs. So that's when the way we work out has to change. And I think that there has to be an acceptance about as we age and the way that the body ages. We want to work out to age well. We want to work out to be healthy and strong, but also flexible so that we keep the structures of the body in their primal functioning by keeping good posture, by not having a rounded spine that's permanent, right? By keeping the body in muscle balance that is strong, okay? So equal muscle balance from front body to back body. So with it, I'm also getting diagnoses of scoliosis. So we're going to go into yoga poses that are specific for scoliosis. But we're first going to address bone loss. So bone loss is and can be normal with the aging process, but weight-bearing exercise really still is and has been proven to be, in yoga, the number one thing to build bone mass. Not many forms of working out do. Running does not, right? Like a lot of aerobic stuff does not necessarily build bone mass. And also we could be talking about lifting weights. That might make your bones strong, but that doesn't necessarily increase the mass. It's usually weight-bearing exercises from your body, but again, we want them done correctly, okay? So yoga is also really good for providing more space in the spine. It's also going to help people. I've had people who were losing height as they aged, and they ended up gaining some of that back as they practiced yoga like pretty regularly for like, I think it was like a year or 2 years later that I've had them actually reverse what was shrinking in their height. And so as we're looking at this, I'm going to break down the poses, first starting with bone loss. What are some of the things? So any weight-bearing any weight-bearing exercise is going to help that. But as far as really watching bone loss in the hips or due to osteoporosis, we want to work on what poses broken down help specifically against that. And that's what we're going to go over next. So one of the things that helps with any kind of bone loss or osteoporosis is downward dog. And downward dog, you know, a lot of people, their heels will be lifted off the earth. Their hamstrings are very tight. At other times, they might need to do downward dog with their knees bent instead of trying to force and press their heels down towards the earth. So downward dog we want to also check, I'm just going to show you that our shoulders are not out of the socket, but they're plugged in the socket. So that rotation that I made, this is my shoulders in socket here. And I can pedal in downward dog. And it's known as a resting pose. Most people do not view it as a resting pose when they first start yoga because it doesn't feel like it at first. But we have this fascia line that goes from our Achilles, up our calves, up the erector spinae of the spine, up the back body, all the way up the back of our head. And it can cause headaches. It can cause our ability of our spine to get too pulled on when the hamstrings are too tight, right? There's all sorts of structural things that can happen when the back body fascia line gets really tight. It can even add to headaches. So downward dog stretches that back fascia line out. It also stretches to keep our side body long on each side. And we want to prevent one side of our body getting too tight over the other. Sometimes that can be a precursor for moving things possibly into worse scoliosis or into scoliosis, right? So when we're talking about downward dog, it does a lot of amazing things. So this, again, I'm just going to show you, I'm in table position in yoga. I give a slight scoop to the tailbone, I press back, and I'm in downward dog. I can bend my knees, but if I bend my knees, I don't want to round my spine. I want to keep my spine straight, pressing through all fingertip pads, lengthening up through both side bodies evenly, drawing my belly button in and out. And then if I can press the heels down towards the earth, or I can pedal the feet as I warm up that fascia line and allow it to stretch out. And so that is the first pose that helps. Another one is coming down. We're going to do bridge pose. So in bridge pose, you're going to come flat on your belly all the way down on the mat. You can even lengthen your legs out a little bit by slowly lifting each one. But what you don't want, the biggest thing that I see where people make a mistake is they'll open their legs up like this or a little too wide, and this is impinging my SI joint and the nerves at the base of my spine. So I want my heels and I want my ankles in line with the head of my femur bone. So I want them really hip distance apart. And in cobra pose, it's not about how high up I come. I just want to allow my palms to be to the earth. I want to squeeze my arms towards the sides of my torso, this isometric squeeze. And then I'm softly going to tuck and scoop my tailbone just a little and begin to lift and press into the earth. I'm just going to come into like a lower one, and it's a back bend. It's also going to build strength in the arms, help the pecs get stronger, multiple arm muscles, and strengthen the back body. So taking a nice deep breath in and exhaling, coming down. It's also weight bearing still and hugging in through the lower spine and the hips. And so again, this is cobra pose. Gently pressing into the earth, lifting up from the earth, hugging back my arms and my shoulders downward towards my glutes so that I'm not hiking my shoulders, hugging skin to muscle to bone, and gently making sure that I'm not wrenching the spine straight up, but staying really strong, right, towards my core. So that is cobra pose. Locust pose is another one. So in locust pose, we just gently lift the legs and the arms up, head stays facing down, and I puff into the back of the throat. Again, this is strengthening my back body, strengthening my triceps. I'm still weight bearing in the center of the body, right? I'm having this resistance using my own body in the posture. So I'm slowly going to rock to come all the way up. And now in yoga, whenever I do something that's a back bend, so locust pose, like you just saw, cobra pose is a back bend. These are gentler variations of back bends. And again, we're not worried when we have osteoporosis or bone loss. We're not trying to do camel, okay? So we don't necessarily have to go to those advanced back bends. We don't have to do advanced poses anymore. It might not be good for us past a certain age. I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit more. And then from here, we want to, when we've done a back bend, do a counter pose. So if my spine has done this kind of movement, it has to get a stretch movement and what we call a counter pose after. There is a science to the way we sequence the postures in yoga. So when I go from a back bend, I then want to go to child's pose, or I can go to puppy dog, or I'm going to go to downward dog, okay? So this would be child's pose. Knees are wide as the mat. I'm gently pressing with my hands, letting my lower back get like a stretch, lengthening the spine, stretching out what I just had activated in my strength muscles through the other posture. If I want puppy dog, my knees are under the body, toes are tucked, and I'm stretching like this. This also feels good to release the shoulder blades, releasing still the spinal cord, but not as intense in the lumbar spine as child pose. And then if I choose to, my other variation is downward dog. Okay, so this gives me 3 variations on how to have a counter pose after my bridge or my locust pose. All right, so still moving on to the series, right, for when we're talking about building bone mass. So some of the other postures are going to be tree pose. Now it's really funny because when you're teaching balance, people tend to if they've never done it or it's been a while, kind of freak out. And so you can always go near a wall. You can absolutely put one hand to the wall. Let's say I'm starting with tree as right leg is my standing leg. I can have the wall next to me and put my right hand on it. I am going to turn for a moment just as I do this, because when we're doing balance work, one of the biggest things that we see is, again, I'm going to start with my right leg. I have a standing leg, and then I just like anywhere kind of mindlessly stick my foot somewhere, and most of the time what I see is somebody's hip goes like this, but they feel like they're in tree pose. And again, right here my spine is being torqued. My SI joint is slowly torquing this way, where the tailbone's going to move to the right and the top of the SI joint is going to shift, not supporting the lumbar spine as much. So the proper way when we do balance is you're going to take your fingers and do not be shy. You're going to gently press them in the center of your glute, where your lateral rotator muscles, where your lateral rotator muscles are actually innervating. And you can choose to bring your foot low. You can come a little higher on the calf. You want to skip the knee entirely. So there's 3 different variations. If you're going to go high, skip the knee joint. You're then from here, instead of letting that right hip kind of press out, you're going to keep your fingers right at the lateral rotators and then press them downward into your heel, and notice how my whole side body opened and straightened, okay? So again, I'm going to show you. Lateral rotators are going to press down into the earth, those muscles I'm talking about. I'm trying to keep my balance. These yoga pants are a little slippery. That's so funny. So I'm pressing my inner thigh into my foot. I'm really isometrically squeezing my inner thigh in, getting lateral rotators to root down. Notice when I activate that, it makes me almost lose balance, because that's like the strength that I just moved through while I'm balancing. And then I also fractured the side of my spine, so I have to think a little bit more with my right foot. All right, we're going to go to the left. Just think same thing. I'm going to keep my left lateral rotators, rooting them downward. You're going to notice it's not as much imbalance when I'm on this side. I'm squeezing into the center. Notice when you activate muscles, you might move like that. Sometimes when you're getting used to activating these muscles, you'll fall out of balance because it's the first time you're really learning how to activate them in the proper way. And the body's like, whoa, how do I counterbalance that strength that just happened that you're using? Very normal. So from here again, keeping it nice and strong, I'm giving this squeeze to my inner thighs. I'm hugging skin to muscle to bone with my pelvic bowl even I can add into this. I also have my belly in and up, and I can lift my arms like this. I can put them in prayer if I'm trying to still get used to the balance, or I can lift them way up and stretch the whole front body, okay? All right, so that's tree pose. And then the next pose we're going to do, and I wrote all these down just so I don't forget any, is Warrior 3. So Warrior 3 again is a balance pose. I could use a wall over here if I wanted to, if I was lifting my right leg, right, and using my left leg as standing, but I don't have to use a wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to like gently rock my feet back and forth, just getting my feet to activate before I go into the balance posture. And then I'm slowly going to really squeeze my inner thighs as if I have a yoga block in between them and widen them back. And that's going to anchor me down into the earth. You should feel this shift like you plug in. And then I'm going to try to keep that, right, as I get used to this. And I'm going to keep this left hip from torquing forward. I'm going to keep it back as I lift my right leg. And I can even stick my left thumb into that hip crease so I can get used to that feeling as I squeeze the whole body in my Warrior 3. And I'm gently lifting up to where my body's okay. I can lift up to just here. I can go a little deeper. I can go a little deeper. If I go to the full capacity, I squeeze inner thighs. I squeeze my arms towards the back body. I'm hugging skin to muscle to bone. Again, this is doing like a lot of strengthening in my hips and my spine and my legs, right? It's also strengthening my core. There's a lot of core work in yoga because we're always hugging our belly in and up and using the pelvic bowl to help with the pose. So as we do that, core work is really a part of every posture if yoga is done correctly, okay? So that's Warrior 3, and we can also do it on the other side. And let me just show you what I mean about the outer hip. So I have my right leg, my standing leg. I can lift up, but sometimes this happens with people. We don't want that. Again, I'm torquing my spine. So I want to get that hip crease back. I want length through my right glute. I want to lengthen through my whole body, but I'm hugging to the midline to maintain the posture, and I'm getting strong as I'm activating and stretching, and still I'm getting the weight bearing in the exercise, okay? All right, so Warrior 2 is also really great. This one's really big for the hips and helping them with bone mass. So I'm going to let my left leg be my forward leg. I'm going to take my right leg all the way back. In Warrior 2, my front heel should line up with the back of the arch of my back foot, and my back foot should be parallel to the back end of my mat. I want to make sure that my front knee is not veering inward, but that it's extending more towards the lateral edge of my pinky toe. So I'm not torquing my hinge joint. And I never want my knee to be past my ankle. This stresses the knee joint. Can I get away with it? Yeah. Will I end up wearing my cartilage quicker or causing more issues? Yes. So we want to preserve our joints. So from here, I can go right in line with my ankle, or I back off a little, okay? In Warrior 2, once I'm in the posture, yes, I'm going to face this way, but I just want to look to you. I want you to gently squeeze and hug skin to muscle to bone. Now watching my hips, I'm going to squeeze all of that energy up from my legs up into my pelvic bowl, working the base of my core, but also, right, my low muscles in the pelvic bowl. And that helps bladder health and all sorts of health, right, as we age. And then from here, I'm keeping that, and I'm not doing 100%. Don't engage 100% where you can't hold the pose long, right? Find that perfect, I'm trying too hard, muscle engagement in between, okay? And then from here, as I'm doing that, my arms I like to flip my arms. So instead of doing it like this, which is really the standard form, I like to flip my arms because most of the time we have too much medial movement. You know, you're talking to the therapist that fixes everybody. And so this is okay. You can also do cactus arms. You can interlace your hands behind your back. My legs are working really hard. So if this looks easy, it's not easy, okay? I've just been doing this a long time. And then I'm going to just straighten my leg, take a breath. The other pose that helps is extended side angle. So I can move from warrior two into extended side angle. Legs are exactly the same. And then I'm hugging in towards the pelvic bowl. I've got my belly in and up. I can gently bring my forearm onto my upper leg, right? But I'm not weighing down into this. I'm using my core. I'm just gently touching down. I should be able to lift it. I'm not weight bearing there. I'm really hugging in. I can tiptoe my foot a little closer if I feel like I'm too far with my legs. I really keep my belly in and up here because this is really important for supporting the lower spine. I can stay here with my hand on my hip for extended side angle. I can take pinky towards face and extend over the crown of the head. I'm digging my toes into the earth. I'm hugging all the way up towards the pelvic bowl. I'm going to exhale, or I can even bring my hand down low to the earth and extended side angle. Or I can have a block, which is going to give me a little more space. A lot of blocks are good here. You can take a yoga block and put it there. I don't have one on me today. When I want to come out of this pose, I'm going to hug all the way back up, really hug in my pelvic bowl, really hug in my belly, press through my feet and come all the way up. So I'm gently straightening this leg. I'm just going to tiptoe to center, okay? Okay, so one more time, feel free to pause the video at any time, okay? We're just going over postures for really building, again, bone mass, trying to reverse the loss of bone, especially in our hips or from osteoporosis. So from here, warrior two, again, I have my back foot parallel, front heel to the back heel. I have my toes forward. I have my knee bent. I'm keeping my knee more towards the lateral edge of the engagement towards my pinky toe instead of letting it fall inward towards my big toe mound, and that will want to do so. Then you're going to hug skin to muscle to bone. It's this isometric squeeze and hugging in. You're going to see if you can pull that even into the pelvic bowl some, okay? Navel's in and up. Arms can be like this. So again, I'm in warrior two, or I can flip my palms. I can tiptoe my foot back for a wider pose to make it more strengthening and a little bit more difficult. I can tiptoe my foot more forward if I feel like I don't feel secure enough and I need to kind of diminish that angle of how wide my feet are apart. And then I can do extended side angle. Once you move from warrior two to extended side angle, really dig those toes into the earth, pull all the way up towards the head of this femur bone, because you're gonna need to take pressure off this front knee. So you could tell I'm getting deeper. We went over it the first time, now I'm gonna take you deeper. And then from here, pinky towards face, hug, squeeze. Noticing I'm pulling from my legs all the way into my pelvic bowl. This anchors my pelvis down also to root it as I stretch here. I'm stretching the side of my psoas. I'm stretching my lat. I'm keeping length in my side body as my core and my whole body is getting really strong, and even in my hips. And then from here, I'm going to hug in, really hug in skin to muscle to bone. I could gently bend my arm and extend all the way up through my hand to come up, then straighten this leg, right? It's like something to help me move to extend axial extension through the crown of my head as I release, right? And keep my spine nice and open. I'm gently pivoting my feet, tiptoeing them. I can come to center. I can shake out my legs, okay? So a lot of people, when they start yoga, really, I'm just going to be open and honest, can feel defeated, or I don't know if I can do this. This is really hard. And sometimes I wish I could be like, but you really can. Even if it's 20 minutes, you're going to learn how to strengthen things that you've never felt before, but your whole body becomes healthier through the practice of yoga. It strengthens the whole body and keeps you stretched, which helps your joints stay healthy, your lymph nodes, keeps your circulation healthier, keeps really all pulling on the bone structure that would offset to cause other health issues at a minimum. So there's a lot of things that it does for preventative care and also benefits you. So even if it's 20, 30 minutes, I really encourage you to have the discipline of giving a little bit more time to it, so long as you're doing it correctly or the teacher is teaching you correctly, okay? So one of the other postures, one of the last ones, is plank pose, and I really do talk a lot about plank. So let's just go into the fact that when you start turning 40 as a woman, or you start turning 45, just depends. You know, they've proven that certain cultures go through perimenopause typically earlier than other cultures. So depending on your ethnicity, that can affect it, or how your mom was, right? What age your mom was, what are the family history. But when a woman starts going through perimenopause, and especially after menopause, there's a great fluctuation of hormones. There's a huge fluctuation of also the loss of hormones towards the very end of it. And when that happens, there's all sorts of things going on. And a woman can then be at higher risk for heart attack, suffer from bone loss in a much more quicker pace, we would say. Not that it needs to be something that's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose it in a day, right? But it's still at a faster pace. So some of the disciplines on how we choose to work out or care for our body has to change as we age. So bone loss really becomes more of a concern when we start hitting into that age where we want to do more weight-bearing exercise. It becomes a very pivotal thing for us, and stretching more, that kind of stuff, and strength training. So when we're doing when we're doing plank pose, I don't recommend, this is just me as a licensed massage therapist, what I see, all the injuries. I don't recommend chaturangaing or doing a full plank up really high when you are past a certain age where you're like in your 60s or 70s. Depending on the injuries you've had or surgeries, that might be very detrimental and more harsh for you, okay, in the aging process. Instead, one of the better ways to do the plank pose is to do it properly and not do it up to the full capacity. And let's just move also from adding into, because this is the last pose for I'm going to introduce for osteoporosis or adding bone mass. We're going to talk about scoliosis too. So this posture of bringing the knees down in plank pose is perfect for scoliosis as well. So this will be the first pose for that. So in plank pose, you have somebody in table, they lengthen their knees a little back, they can lift up. This is full plank pose, shoulders in their sockets, squeezing to the midline, scooping the tailbone, really squeezing, holding. There's a lot going on. And then in chaturanga, you're lowering on all fours. And most people, I'm sorry, but this is just me being fully honest. It's like you're chaturangaing your students way too soon sometimes in power yoga. Their shoulders are not warmed up. Their body's not warmed up. This is going to cause early issues, when they're not, in their 70s, maybe dealing with some arthritis, but instead making it happen quicker, or allowing a cervical issue in the spine, or having carpal tunnel issues. We need to warm up when we're doing yoga. That is a very extreme weight-bearing exercise, plank poses. So we need to bring our knees down. We need to warm up for 10 minutes before we're lifting our knees up, and that would be the minimum, depending on also my body or my health history. So with it, bring your knees down, Also, you shouldn't be chaturangaing like 40 times in a 50-minute class or like an hour class. That's way too many. Like again, you're eventually going to compromise your alignment because you're getting tired and you're getting weaker, and then you're going to also have being able to be more prone to injury. So instead, it's about less is more and proper integration. So from here, instead of full plank, just bring my knees down. I'm going to make sure my head and my arm bones are in their sockets. And if you have scoliosis, full plank is not recommended for you. You're supposed to be doing it with your knees down. So you're going to be squeezing toward the midline, hugging isometrically, belly stays in and up. Here you're working really hard. Thumbs are in a J shape instead of an L, and you're pressing into the fingertip pads and then the fingertips. And again, I'm still squeezing to the midline, belly staying in and up. I am really activated here. I feel all my muscles throughout my whole upper body. And the whole squeezing to the midline helps really activate all assisting muscles. So then from here, I can come back to puppy dog if I just want to practice this weight bearing, or I can melt all the way down, release my toes, come up to a cobra pose. Okay, then from a cobra, just sequencing for a second, I can go back into a puppy dog. Okay, or downward dog. All right, so that's the end part, right, of the one subject of we were applying most of those poses for osteoporosis and bone loss, and then we moved right into plank pose with our knees down, moving from that, still working with that subject, into scoliosis, okay? Now, what is scoliosis? Scoliosis is when the spinal cord, instead of having curves that move front to back and the natural curves of the spine at really what is the blueprint of health, the spinal cord starts shifting in S curving or C curving, and that's really not good, because what happens is, let's say if the spine starts shifting a part of the spine like this, then we have possibly, let's say it's the base of the spine, the tailbone going from centered to moving over to the opposite side, then that would take the sacrum and move it and shove it this way. Then that's going to cause the lumbar spine to start to shift this way, right? And what happens is all the nerves in between, discs start slipping, nerves start getting impinged, then we're getting crushing in a hip, possibly, while another hip is lowering. One hip socket's getting more crushed due to the curvature of the spine. This can cause more wear and tear in that limb or in that joint. This also can cause diminished functioning, let's say in the bladder, or areas that are innervated by these nerves that are getting affected from the scoliosis. So one of the top things that helps scoliosis is chiropractic, right? With the right chiropractor, that is such a big deal. Getting massage, like medical massage therapy, which is a really big deal for that condition. Those are like the two best medicines. Surgery sometimes is required. It just depends. And then the third thing is yoga, but proper yoga, right? So you're not doing deep twisting poses with scoliosis. You cannot really twist much at all. And if you're choosing to do twists, which I still think, depending on if it's just more mild scoliosis, you can do twisting, but not really deep. When you're doing twisting with scoliosis, the biggest thing is keeping axial extension, that fifth movement of the spine where we lengthen it from hugging in, rooting down through the pelvic bowl, lifting through the core, and I get the spine to straighten out. And then I'm slowly would just twist. If I'm in a seated twist over to this right knee, I wouldn't twist to the side or all the way back. I would just rotate about a fourth of the way, maybe a third if I have like real mild. But if for any reason, when I start twisting, if I notice my back just doesn't seem to like it and I have scoliosis, I want to stop, okay? So with the biggest things when we're talking about this condition is cat and cow pose. So with it, this movement where we're pressing through, we're rounding the spine. We had moved from table position. This is opening up my spinal cord. This will help it kind of remember to keep movement in the spine. Opening, widening the sitting bones, lifting my chin, really allowing the front of the throat to soften here. Exhaling, rounding the spine, squeezing out the core. So this is like getting flexibility in my spine, allowing the full movement to happen, which helps, again, with the nerves with this condition, but also is really lubricating for the entire spinal cord, and it stretches the front of the core. Okay. Then the other one is side plank. So when I'm doing side plank, I'm in table position, and we only want to do a modification when we have scoliosis. I'm just going to gently turn my toes, but my kneecap is turning with me. My kneecap is going from here to this when my toes rotate, because my toes and my knee are a hinge joint. I don't want to offset a hinge joint where my toes are in one direction and my knee is facing another. That is how I get a tear. That is how I hurt my hinge joint. I always want to keep my toes in line with whatever direction my knee is facing. So as I'm here, I'm slowly just turning my toes, my knee rotated. Then I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to bring my leg out laterally with the lateral edge of my foot parallel with the back end of my mat. My hand placement should be the center of my wrist to my shoulder, right? And so I'm in alignment here. I'm pressing through my fingertip pads and my fingertips. And then I'm slowly beginning to open my arm all the way up. Here, I'm hugging and squeezing skin to muscle to bone, belly staying in and up. And then in plank pose, we like pull our whole back body and tuck it behind our heart center, as if we're even pulling from our triceps towards the back of the heart from both arms, and then allowing our shoulder blades to shoot down towards the glutes. And this helps scoliosis because it likes to turn sideways, and this is strengthening my side body on each side, teaching it to really work the proper muscles that help to reverse it. I have witnessed when my people with scoliosis take breaks from seeing their chiropractor, I can literally see visibly their spine start to curve more. I have certain clients, I'll say, you haven't been going, I need you to start going, you know, like, and then they'll remember, then they'll go, and then when they come back, I notice their spine is already starting to straighten out more and the scoliosis isn't as bad. And then the other thing is, I've had people with scoliosis do side plank more regularly and some of the poses specific for it, and same thing, they start seeing less of a progression, or the progression of scoliosis limits itself to not be as fast. It's just really a beautiful thing. So that's the one side. Here again, I'm like tilting from the toes. My left foot goes out parallel to the mat. I'm making sure my hand's under my shoulder, hugging skin to muscle to bone, pulling towards my back body, belly's in and up, and I'm really pressing through the fingertip pads. I'm not torquing my neck in a big way. I can even puff into the back of the throat some here, okay? Gently, when I come down to come out of it, I lift my toes and turn my knee with me as I come out of it. All right, so again, I want to make sure that I have the fifth movement of the spine, which is axial extension. And then I'm going to show you bridge pose, which a lot of people know bridge pose. Bridge pose, again, is very good for scoliosis, and so we're squeezing, hugging skin to muscle to bone. I tuck my shoulders under, I'm lifting my hips, and this is an inversion. So there's multiple variations. This can be just arms all the way down, squeezing, lifting up. I'm really tucking in even at the base of the glutes here. I can, if my shoulders are okay and my cervical spine, tuck under a little bit more and interlace my hands. I can even lift my toes. But again, I'm taking it to where my body's okay with it. There's more variations, but we're just going to stop with these, right? Again, squeezing, hugging skin to muscle to bone. And when I come out of it, I do so very slowly and mindfully. When I come out of bridge, my counter pose is hugging my knees in and rocking side to side. Okay, it's just a different movement for the spine. Now, one of the other things that is important is tilting the pelvic bowl. And the way that I teach this is you're gently going to bring your middle fingers together and your thumbs. You're allowing them to come down right at the base. From the belly button is where the thumbs touch, and then the middle fingers down towards the pubic bone. And so one of the things that we can hear in yoga is tilt your pelvic bowl, scoop your tailbone. This is really important. And so one of the things that we can do is also lay down and do a rotation with this. So with this is more the way that I would teach somebody with scoliosis is when you're lying upon the earth. But I do have students do it sometimes a little bit in different positions. But when I'm trying to get them to learn it like in a more concrete way, this is the way we practice. So you should feel the belly button go towards the spine and your middle fingers lift upward. So the pubic bone's lifting upward more, the belly button's moving towards the spine. You hold as you breathe. You notice that the lumbar curve is diminished and your spine comes closer to the earth. This is one part of the pelvic tilt, and then coming back to normal, we allow the pubic bone to drop back down, belly button rises to its neutral position, and then to go back to it, pubic bone lifts up, belly button comes towards the spine. I'm gently holding this and just feeling, again, what that engagement feels like. When I release that posture, I should feel like the lumbar curve enhances and moves away from my mat, away from the floor, okay? All right. And there's, I always laugh, there's so much talking that I feel like I have to do when I'm describing the postures, but it's just important. You know, I want you to be able to practice safely and make sure that your yoga is helping you, not harming you. And so just looking at this so that we can talk about anything else that would be important when we're really being very specific with scoliosis. So Tadasana pose is also great. Warrior One, and you can look that up because I want to keep the time frame a certain amount of time, so I have to keep moving on. We don't want to over twist. We want to avoid deep forward folds, or, you know, like forward folding where we're touching our toes if we have scoliosis. Instead, we're going to back off of the forward fold, and we're going to watch the length of our spine and maybe just come about halfway instead if we have scoliosis, where we're getting the space to release in the spine. We're still getting a little bit of stretch through the spine, but we're not causing more issues by going too deep when the spine is curving in an opposite way, okay? And then we also would say that bird dog, which is when we're in table position and one leg, let's say right leg goes back, left hand lifts up and goes forward. Remember, you squeeze to the midline a lot on that one, but you can also check that out. Bird dog is a pose for scoliosis and strengthening it and helping with some of the stuff. The biggest things, we stay away from our wheel. We stay away from camel when we have that condition. We stay away from deep, intense back bends. We would absolutely not do scorpion pose. We would absolutely not do, what was I going to say, shoulder stand, okay? So we stay away from more advanced poses, and that's perfectly fine. You know, it's really important to accept that if I've done yoga like somebody like me for 20 years or longer, if you didn't start as young as I did, right, that would already put you older to where you would already have to really consider advanced poses not being in the play field anymore, okay? Because they might have been really beneficial in your 20s and your 30s. For some of us, like me, you know, you can get away with it in around 40 and into the very early part of your 40s. But once you start crossing that line, it's not the best thing for you to be doing wheel pose. It's not, especially as a woman, again, due to perimenopause and menopause. With men, you might be able to go a little bit later, more with the extreme advanced postures, but let's really talk when we start hitting 50 for sure. I really have to care about not stressing my joint like that, and I don't have the same muscle mass because collagen's being lost and certain things are diminishing through the aging process. And so I have to care about heavy loading my joints in that exercise or in those advanced poses, okay? Headstand safe though, as you get older, very safe as long as you can do it correctly. Certain other advanced poses are fine. We're talking about the heavy joint weight bearing ones, okay? And so one of the other things would be, let's see here. Oh no, I think I covered it all. What a wonderful thing. So just so I know, what time do we have?
We're at 45 minutes.
Okay, great. All right, we're gonna start to wrap it up. And I'm just going to go over a meditation for women. And this is going to help the energy of the pelvic bowl, healing for a woman's womb, but also teaching about how the cervix, which a lot of women don't know. A lot of people know how to ground, but a lot of women don't know that grounding can be completed also with the cervix. The cervix is very foundational, and it's a part of a system of a woman that's unique and that's only to women, not men, that helps them ground. So we can ground through our foot chakras and the arches of our feet, but we also want to open up our cervix to the energy body to allow it to connect with earth energy and not close it when we feel diminished, or if somebody's being invasive or narcissistic, or a man's trying to force himself on us, or, you know what I'm saying? We have to be able to be in a complex situation, not close it or feel like we're diminishing it, but stand in our power and make sure we stay grounded in our energy body, grounded in our cervix, especially when we're in like newer situations where we're trying to feel things out. We need to pay attention to not cutting that part of our energy body off, because it can become really hurtful for the good functioning of the woman's reproductive system, also hurtful in the health of, you know, the cervix itself and a couple other things. So with it, you're just gently either going to come on your back on your yoga mat, or you're going to come to seated posture, Sukhasana pose. Again, you can sit on a blanket. You're finding a comfortable place to just breathe into the meditation. Let your back body imagine that you are pressing into the earth, or if you're seated, into an imaginary wall behind you. So you're not leaning forward, but you're allowing yourself to even let some weight bearing move towards the back body, as if you have this wall behind you. And you're bringing your hands to the low belly or in a relaxed position as you draw consciousness and your breath of life, all of your inward consciousness as your eyes are closed, moving towards the pelvic bowl and the breath of life. And so you begin to feel this ability of inhaling in the breath of life, and exhaling it and feeling deeply relaxed and more settled. You feel the breath of life move in through the arches of the feet, through the grounding chakras, placing your awareness there, as if the earth energy and the chakras in your feet begin to really open, and you feel this energy move in through the pace of your own breath at your inhale, letting the breath lift all the way up from the arches of the feet, up the limbs, And all the way down through the exhale, out the pelvic bowl, down the legs, all the way out through the bottom of your feet. Gently as you inhale, lifting through that earth energy and the breath of life through the base of the feet, the arches of the feet, all the way up through the limbs to the pelvic bowl. And as you exhale, that earth energy, that breath energy releases, cascading back down and out through the bottom of the feet. Now, being a woman, I want you to still feel that deep groundedness that you are achieving, but I want you to really this time allow yourself to imagine as if you could find your cervix, as if you could feel the very base of the cervix. And you're going to imagine as if the breath of life and the earth energy opens and the cervix allows itself to feel safe and relaxes enough to feel open in its energy field, and allows the earth energy to lift up through the cervix and the pelvic bowl. And as you exhale, releasing the breath all the way out through the cervix and the pelvic bowl. It's like, let yourself feel I'm safe, I'm cared for as you do this breath, I'm nurtured. So breathing in, up from the earth energy, up through the cervix, letting the breath really wash and like really open the womb and the cervix to the true energy that's supposed to sustain it in health and function, and allowing yourself to feel that relax and that release of that earth energy in the breath from this area of your body back out of the pelvic bowl down towards the earth. And breathe in this way for however long you need. Like, the longer you do it, the more settled the tailbone will become, the more relaxed your reproductive system will become, more relaxed what we call the heart, womb, throat axis of a woman will become. And really, your cervix is supposed to be opened enough to articulate with that energy and receive it at all times. And I want you to notice that as you're doing this, how you continue to calm, but also how it brings you closer to the woman that you are, realizing that our wombs have been given by God to help us be able to not only have kids, but like to have this nurturing quality, to have this creative force within our bodies, all sorts of amazing things that are unique to us being a woman. And with it, you really touch base to your womanhood, to this beautiful part of, and biologically, but also to the very spirit and soul of who you have been created to be. And so you want this area of your body to stay in harmony. There's too many times we're very unaware of it, and it can become ill or sick, right? We can have a bad pap or some bad test result. And so this kind of work, breathing into this area for multiple minutes, eventually working up to like 5 to 10 minutes, a couple times a week, will transform your understanding of how to keep this place open while you're going throughout your life. And that will also reduce anxiety and a couple other things. So when you feel ready, you can finish, but I'm just going to wrap up here. Maybe you keep your eyes closed and you just keep breathing in that way. And I just hope that you continue to speak your words of life into you and into others. And hopefully this video helped all the people who have questions about these conditions. And have a very blessed and wonderful day. Take care. Bye.